Okay, this is my tiny video to show you how to do a knit stitch. So I'm just doing the slip knot here to get started. I'm using the long tail cast on. I have a video about that if you want to see that. I'm just going to do it really quick here. I just want to mention, I mentioned it a little bit in the knitting on video. I am not going to be showing the continental and English style separately of knitting. I feel like the important part is the way you wrap the yarn around the needle and what your stitches look like. The way you hold that yarn is not a huge deal, so I would not worry too much about that unless you're finding that you're uncomfortable in the way that you're doing it. Then just look up some other ways and maybe try those out. Try the continental, try the English, try my way if you want, and then go from there. You'll probably develop your own, what feels comfortable to you. So here we go. Got a few stitches here I'm going to start with. I recommend starting with like 15 to 20 stitches as you're learning. That gives you a chance to kind of get in a rhythm as you go across the row. But as I said in the other video, it also moves you along pretty quick, so you'll start to see some knitting build up, and it's kind of exciting to see that happen even if you're not working on something specific. So I'll show you the way I hold the yarn. This is the yarn that's connected to the skein. Obviously we don't want to be using the tail piece. So what I do, I grab the yarn like this, right between my index and my middle finger, and then I just wrap it around like so. So that just kind of helps me to keep that yarn tight as I work. And then I hold the needle, usually have my index finger right along that very first stitch. It helps to, when I'm knitting, I use it to push the stitch off and all of that. So I'll push all of this up towards the tip, but not all the way off. And then we'll take this, our right needle, we'll slip it into the front loop here. As you can see, basically like the front part of the stitch and the back of the stitch here. So we're going to slip this into the front of the stitch, give you a little idea what that looks like from the back. Then we're going to wrap this yarn around that needle, and then we're going to pull it through like so. We'll slip that through, wrap it around, and pull it through like so. And you're starting to get some knit stitches there. I'm going to stick that through. Uh-oh, my tail's getting in the way. See, that can be dangerous because you need to make sure you're always using the yarn that's connected to the skein. So if that gets in the way, just pull it down. So you're slipping it through that front of the stitch, wrapping it around, pulling it out the other side, then you're slipping that stitch off the needle. Slipping that into the front of the stitch, wrapping your yarn around, pulling that through, and then dropping that stitch. Slipping that in the front, wrapping around, pulling that through just like so, and then we're dropping the stitch off the back of that left needle. Essentially you're just knitting in those stitches, dropping them, and then you're moving everything over to that right needle. Okay, so now we've got one row here, knitted work. We are going to flip this needle over so we can knit back on the other side. So we're looking at the back of our knitting here. So we just knit on this side. You can see our knitted row in there, hiding those little V's. That's a knit stitch. Then on the back side of that knitted row, we have these little ridges. This is the back of a knitted stitch. It's also called a purl stitch. So they're basically opposites of each other. A purl stitch on the front looks like a ridge, a bump. purl stitch on the back looks like a knit stitch. So I'll get more into that in the next video where I will show you how to create a purl stitch. And then we'll talk all about how they kind of work together. So let's do another row here. Knit stitch. So you're gonna you're slipping that left needle into that front leg of the stitch, mount the back. You're wrapping the yarn over the top of that needle, pulling it through to the front, and then you're dropping that stitch. And this is, like I said before, you'll find your own way to hold the needle, I mean the yarn. This is the way I do it. I just use both my thumb and my index finger usually, wrap that yarn around, and then I just kind of pinch it between my index and my middle finger on the other side, hold it tight a little bit, and then pull it through. It's just, this is just what I've found works best for me. I've tried to switch to the other methods of knitting. It slows me down incredibly. I'm sure I would get used to it if I stuck with it, but I've been knitting too long to change the way I do it now. So now we have the back of a knit stitch right here, and this is the front, the back of a knit row and the front of a knit row right in here. So I'm going to do a couple more of those. I'm going to speed it up a little bit, maybe, unless it looks slow, and then I'm just being slow. If it looks fast, then that's totally the way I normally knit. But if you're like, man, she knits slow, that's just because I'm doing it slow for your benefit. Alright, so here we go. I just want to show you what your knitted fabric will start to look like when you are knitting all the stitches. So you know when you're practicing that you're doing it right. Let's do maybe one. Oh no, that's good. We'll call this good. So what you're looking at here, this is called garter stitch. Garter stitch is just knitting every stitch on every row. So right here, this is that very first row that we knit down here, hiding under that ridge right in here. And then we have this ridge, which is the back side of our second knit row. Then in this valley in here is our third knit row. And then this ridge right here is our fourth row, the back side of our fourth row. So this is a garter stitch, and this is what you'll see as you're practicing. When you're only doing knit stitch, this is what it's going to look like. I actually have an example here. I'll show you, maybe if the light's good enough. So this is garter stitch. This is every row, every stitch, knit only. So this is what you'll start to see as you work. And then in the next video I'll show you how to purl, and then you'll be able to do this right here, which is stockinette stitch. It's actually upside down, but you get the idea. There. So this is, when we start purling, we can start making fabric that looks like this. And I will show you that in the next video.